The Vrokor were known across the galaxy by many names. Some called them the Soul Breakers. Others called them the Mind Eaters. But most species simply called them the End of Hope. For 10,000 years, the Vrokor had conquered civilizations without ever firing a weapon. They did not need armies or warships. They needed only their knowledge of suffering. When they wanted to conquer a world, they captured its leaders. They took these leaders to their ships and caused them great pain. Not pain of the body alone, but pain of the mind and heart. They knew exactly how to break every species they met. No one had ever resisted them. The greatest warriors fell. The wisest leaders crumbled. The bravest heroes became empty shells who begged to surrender everything. The Vrokor were patient, and they were very, very good at what they did. When they discovered humanity, they watched from far away for many years. They studied human broadcasts and intercepted human messages. They learned that humans felt pain and fear and loneliness, just like every other species. The Vrokor were not worried. Humans would break like all the others. They captured their first human from a small research ship near the edge of human space. His name was Kong Tai-ho, and he was 34 years old. He had been a philosophy professor in a city called Busan before he joined the research mission. He was not a soldier. He was not a leader. He was simply a man who liked to think about big questions. Tai-ho woke up in a white room. The walls were smooth and bright. There were no windows and no doors that he could see. The air was cool and clean, but somehow empty. He sat up slowly and looked around. His head hurt a little, but he was not injured. He remembered the attack on his ship. Strange vessels had appeared from nowhere. There was a bright light, and then nothing. Now he was here, wherever here was. He waited. He did not panic. He did not shout or bang on the walls. He simply sat and waited and thought about his situation. After what felt like several hours, a section of the wall opened. A creature walked in. It was tall and thin, with gray skin that looked like old leather. Its eyes were large and dark, and its face had no expression that Tai-ho could read. It wore simple robes of deep red color. Behind this creature came a smaller one of the same species. This one carried a device that looked like it was recording everything. The tall creature looked at Tai-ho for a long moment. Then it spoke. Its voice was smooth and cold, like ice sliding over stone. "I am High Inquisitor Molthan of the Vrokor. You are the first of your kind that we have taken. You should feel honored." Tai-ho looked at the creature calmly. "Where am I?" "You are on my ship. You are very far from your home. No one is coming to save you. No one knows where you are." Tai-ho nodded slowly. He accepted this information without argument. "Why have you taken me?" Molthan moved closer. His dark eyes studied Tai-ho like a scientist studying a small insect. "We take. We break. This is what the Vrokor do. We will cause you to suffer until your spirit collapses. Then you will tell us everything about your species, your weaknesses, your fears, the secret paths to breaking humanity. And if I refuse?" Molthan made a sound that might have been a laugh. "They all refuse at first. The warriors of the Kelthan Empire refused. They lasted 4 days. The mind priests of Yorath refused. They lasted 6 days. The immortal queens of Velith refused. They lasted 9 days. In the end, they all break. They all tell us everything. They all become nothing." The smaller creature, the one recording, spoke up. "High Inquisitor, preliminary scans show this human is not a military leader or a politician. He appears to be a teacher of some kind." Molthan waved his long hand dismissively. "It does not matter. We start with whoever we can capture. This one will serve our purpose well enough. He seems intelligent. The intelligent ones often break faster. They understand what is happening to them." Tai-ho listened to all of this. He felt fear, yes. He was human, and humans feel fear. But he had spent his whole life thinking about difficult questions. He had read the works of humans who had faced suffering and death with calm minds. He had taught students about the power of thought over circumstance. He took a slow breath and spoke. "Before we begin, may I ask you something?" Molten tilted his head. This was unusual. Most captured beings screamed or cried or made desperate promises. This human simply wanted to ask a question. "You may ask. What do you believe suffering is?" Molten was silent for a moment. No one had ever asked him this question. He was the one who asked questions. He was the one who understood suffering better than anyone in the galaxy. "Suffering is pain," he said finally. "Pain of body, pain of mind, pain of heart. Suffering is what happens when a being experiences more than it can bear." "That is all." Tae-ho shook his head gently. "That is one way to see it, but there are other ways. Where I come from, we have thought about suffering for thousands of years. We have many ideas about what it is and what it means." "Your ideas will not help you here, human. Tomorrow we begin. You will experience things that your species has never imagined. You will learn what true suffering feels like." Molten turned to leave. The wall opened for him, and he stepped through. But before the wall closed, he looked back at Tae-ho. "Rest while you can. You will need your strength." The wall sealed shut. Tae-ho was alone again. He lay back down on the cold floor. He looked up at the white ceiling. He thought about his father, who was a fisherman in the old days. His father had lost an arm in an accident when Tae-ho was young. But his father never stopped working. He never stopped smiling. He used to tell Tae-ho that pain was just information, the body telling the mind that something was wrong, and the mind could choose what to do with that information. Tae-ho thought about his grandmother, who lived through war and hunger and loss. She never became bitter. She used to say that suffering was like weather. It came and it went. The secret was not to build your house out of suffering, but to let it pass over you like rain. He thought about all the books he had read, all the thinkers who had faced darkness and found light. He was afraid, but he was also curious. The Vrakor had broken every species in the galaxy. They were experts in suffering. But Tae-ho wondered if they had ever met a species that had spent so long thinking about suffering. A species that had built entire systems of thought around the question of pain and meaning. Tomorrow would bring pain. Tae-ho knew this, but tonight he would rest, and he would think. In the monitoring room, Molten spoke to his assistant, the one called Yeltris. "This human seems unremarkable. I predict 3 days until full psychological collapse, perhaps 4 if he is stubborn. Make a note of it." Yeltris made the note, but something bothered her. The human had not reacted like other new captures. He had not screamed or bargained. He had asked a philosophical question. She did not mention her concerns to Molten. He was the master. He had broken over 400 species. He certainly knew what he was doing, but still, something felt different about this one. Something felt wrong. Molten led Tae-ho to a large room filled with strange machines. The walls were dark here, not white like his cell. Metal arms hung from the ceiling. Screens covered every surface, showing numbers and patterns that Tae-ho did not understand. "This is where we work," Molten said. His voice was calm, almost gentle. "We have perfected our methods over thousands of years. We do not cause permanent damage to the body. We simply activate the pain receptors directly. Pure suffering without injury. You will feel everything, but your body will remain whole." Tae-ho looked around the room. He saw a chair in the center with straps for arms and legs. He understood what was about to happen. "Sit," Molten commanded. Tae-ho walked to the chair and sat down. He did not fight. Fighting would change nothing. The straps closed around his wrists and ankles automatically. Yeltris stood near a control panel, watching with her recording device active. She would document everything for the Vrakor archives. Molten pressed a button. The pain was like nothing Tae-ho had ever experienced. It was fire and ice at the same time. It was needles in every part of his body. It was a scream that started in his bones and tried to tear its way out through his skin. He screamed. He could not help it. His body twisted against the straps. Sweat poured down his face. Every muscle tightened until he thought they would tear. Then the pain stopped. Tae-ho gasped for air. His heart was beating so fast he could hear it in his ears. His whole body was shaking. "That was level 1, Molten said calmly. "There are 100 levels. Most beings break somewhere between levels 15 and 30. The strongest make it to level 50 before they collapse completely." He pressed the button again. The pain returned. It was worse this time. Deeper. Tae-ho screamed again. Tears ran down his cheeks. His mind tried to escape, to go somewhere else, but there was nowhere to go. The pain was everywhere. When it stopped, Tae-ho hung in the chair like a wet cloth. He could barely breathe. His thoughts were scattered and wild. But in the silence between the sessions, something happened. His mind began to work again, not fighting the pain, but looking at it, examining it. His father's voice came back to him from long ago. "Pain is information, son. Your body is telling your mind that something is wrong, but your mind can choose what to do with that information. You can let it control you, or you can listen to it and keep going." Tae-ho remembered his father going out to sea with one arm. Other fishermen said he was crazy, but his father just smiled and said, "The fish don't care how many arms I have. They only care if I'm smart enough to catch them." The pain came again. Level 3. Tae-ho screamed, but this time a small part of his mind stayed separate. It watched the pain like a student watching a lesson. What is this feeling? Where does it come from? What is it trying to tell me? The sessions continued for hours. Molten slowly increased the levels. By level 10, Tae-ho was sure he would die. By level 15, he wished he would die. By level 20, something strange happened. He stopped fighting, not because he gave up, but because he finally understood something. The pain was real. He could not make it go away. He could not escape it, but he could change how he related to it. He remembered a lesson he used to teach his students about a man named Epictetus, who was born a slave and was lame in one leg. This man had written that we do not control what happens to us, but we control how we respond. The same experience can destroy one person and make another person stronger. The difference is in the mind. Molten noticed something on his screens. The human's vital signs were changing. Heart rate was slowing down instead of speeding up. Breathing was becoming regular. Brain activity was shifting to patterns he had never seen before. "Increase to level 25, he ordered. Yeltris obeyed. The pain should have been unbearable. Tae-ho made a sound, but it was not quite a scream. It was more like a deep exhale. His face twisted with the pain, but his eyes stayed clear. When the session ended, Molten walked close to the chair. He studied Tae-ho's face with great interest. "You are still here," he observed. "Usually at this level, the mind starts to break apart. You should be begging me to stop. You should be promising me anything." Tae-ho took several deep breaths. His voice was rough when he spoke, but his words were steady. "I have been thinking." Molten's dark eyes narrowed. "Thinking? During the pain?" "Yes, about what pain actually is." Tae-ho coughed and continued. "Pain is information. My body telling my mind that something is wrong. But my mind can choose what to do with that information. I cannot stop the signal, but I can decide what it means. It means suffering. It means you should surrender. That is one interpretation. But there are others." Tae-ho looked directly at Molten. "Where I come from, we have a tradition. When a student learns something difficult, we say they have eaten bitterness. We do not see hardship as only negative. Sometimes it is a teacher." Moulton stepped back. This was not how captured beings were supposed to respond. They were supposed to break down, to lose their sense of self, to become desperate animals willing to do anything to make the pain stop. This human was having philosophical discussions. "Continue the sessions," Moulton ordered. "Level 30. The pain increased. Tae-ho suffered. He screamed and cried and shook. But in the spaces between sessions, he kept thinking. He recited poetry in his mind. He remembered the faces of everyone he loved. He held conversations with his dead father and his grandmother and his old teachers. The pain was like a river. At first, he had tried to stand against it, to stop it with his body. But that was impossible. Now, he let the river flow through him. He did not pretend it did not hurt. It hurt terribly. But he did not let it sweep him away. When the day's sessions finally ended, Moulton stood over Tae-ho for a long time. "You are still conscious. You are still coherent. This is highly unusual." Tae-ho's voice was barely a whisper. "May I ask you something? You seem to like asking questions. Why do you do this? What does the Vrakor gain from causing suffering?" Moulton considered the question. No subject had ever asked him this. They were usually too broken to form words by now. "Power," he answered. "Control. When we break the leaders, their people surrender. We gain their worlds, their resources, their obedience. Suffering is a tool, nothing more." Tae-ho nodded weakly. "But have you ever wondered if there might be better tools? Ones that do not require so much pain?" Moulton did not answer. He turned and walked out of the room. In her report that night, Yeltris noted that the human subject was not following predicted deterioration models. Psychological breakdown had not occurred. The subject remained capable of complex thought and communication. She added a note that troubled her. The human seemed to be studying the suffering as much as experiencing it, as if pain was something to be understood rather than merely endured. Moulton read the report and dismissed it. "Increase the intensity tomorrow," he ordered. "The human will break. They always do." But lying in his cell that night, Tae-ho looked up at the ceiling and smiled a small smile. His body hurt everywhere, but his mind was still his own. Tomorrow would bring more pain. He accepted this. But he also accepted something else. He was learning something about himself, about what humans could endure, about the power of thought over circumstance. His grandmother used to say, "The bamboo bends in the storm, the oak breaks." Tae-ho closed his eyes and let himself become bamboo. The storm was just beginning. Moulton had decided to change his approach. Physical pain had not broken the human. His body suffered, but his mind remained whole, so now they would attack the mind directly. The isolation chamber was the Vrakor's second weapon. It was a room of perfect nothingness. No light, no sound, no touch, no smell. Nothing to see, hear, or feel, just endless darkness and silence. Most species could survive one day in the chamber. By the second day, they started talking to themselves. By the third day, they began to scream. By the fourth day, the screaming stopped. By the fifth day, when the Vrakor opened the door, they found creatures that had lost their minds completely. The longest any being had survived with their sanity intact was 6 days. That was a warrior priest from a species known for mental discipline. Even he came out believing he was someone else. Tae-ho stood in the darkness. He could not see his own hands. He could hear nothing except the sound of his own breathing and heartbeat. The floor beneath his feet was neither cold nor warm. It simply was. He understood immediately what the Vrakor were trying to do. "They want to erase me," he said out loud. His voice sounded strange in the perfect silence. "If there is nothing outside, they think the inside will collapse." He sat down on the floor. He crossed his legs in the way his grandmother had taught him when he was a boy. She had learned meditation from her mother, and her mother from her mother before that. When the world is too loud, his grandmother used to say, go inside yourself and find the quiet place. When the world is too quiet, go inside yourself and find the busy place. Tae-ho closed his eyes. It made no difference, since there was no light anyway. But it helped him focus. He began to recite poetry. He started with the old poems his grandmother had taught him, songs about mountains and rivers, about seasons changing, about lovers separated by war. He spoke them out loud at first, then silently in his mind. When he ran out of poems, he moved to philosophy. He reconstructed entire lectures he had given at the university. He imagined his students sitting before him, taking notes, asking questions. He explained the ideas of ancient thinkers. He debated with himself about the meaning of life and death. One day passed. Then, two. Tae-ho lost track of time in the darkness. It might have been 3 days or 5. He did not know. But he kept his mind active. He played memory games. He tried to remember every student he had ever taught, their names, their faces, the questions they asked. He tried to remember every book he had ever read, every meal he had enjoyed with friends, every sunset he had watched from his apartment window. He was not pretending the isolation did not hurt. It did. Humans are social creatures. They need connection. The silence pressed against him like a weight. The darkness felt like it was trying to swallow him. But Tae-ho discovered something in that endless night. Loneliness and solitude were not the same thing. Loneliness was wanting connection and not having it. It was reaching out and finding nothing. It was pain. But solitude was being complete within yourself. It was finding that you were enough. It was peace. He thought about this difference for a long time. I am alone, he said to the darkness, but I carry everyone I have ever loved inside my mind. My father is here. My grandmother is here. My teachers, my friends, my students, they are all here with me. He began to have conversations with these memories. He talked to his father about fishing and about courage. His father reminded him that the sea was vast and uncaring, but a good sailor could survive anything. He talked to his grandmother about patience and about faith. She reminded him that winter always ended, even when it seemed like the snow would last forever. He talked to an old professor who had been his mentor. The professor reminded him that thinking was the highest form of human activity, that a mind in motion could never be truly imprisoned. These were not hallucinations. Tae-ho knew they were memories. He was not losing his grip on reality. He was using his memories as tools to keep his mind alive. 7 days passed. The door opened. Light flooded into the chamber, blinding and painful. Molten stood in the doorway. Behind him, Yeltris held her recording device with shaking hands. They expected to find a broken creature. A thing that had lost all sense of who it was. A being reduced to animal terror. Instead, they found Tae-ho sitting calmly on the floor. He blinked against the light and slowly stood up. His legs were stiff from sitting so long, but he stood without help. "Hello?" he said. His voice was rough from days of talking to himself, but it was steady. "I'm glad to see you. It was getting a bit quiet in there." Molten said nothing for a long moment. He studied the human with an expression that might have been confusion or anger or something else entirely. "You should be mad," he finally said. "No species has ever survived 7 days in the chamber with their mind intact." Tae-ho smiled weakly. "I had good company." "There was no company. The chamber is empty. We monitored everything." "You were completely alone." "That is where you are wrong," Tae-ho said. "I was never alone. I carried my whole world inside my mind, my memories, my thoughts, my connections to everyone I have ever known." He paused. "You can take away everything outside of me, but you cannot take away what is inside." Molten turned to Yeltris. "Did you detect any malfunction in the chamber? Any external stimulation?" Yeltris checked her records. No, High Inquisitor. The chamber functioned perfectly. Total sensory deprivation for 168 hours. The humans simply endured. Not just endured, Tejo corrected gently. I did not survive by resisting the solitude. I survived by embracing it. I realized something in there. The Vrakor method assumes that beings need external things to stay sane. But humans have learned to build worlds inside themselves. He looked at Molten directly. May I ask you something? Molten's jaw tightened. You and your questions. Do the Vrakor have philosophers, thinkers who ponder the nature of existence? The question seemed to strike Molten like a physical blow. He did not answer immediately. We had philosophers once, he finally said. His voice was strange. Long ago, but they were a weakness. They asked too many questions. They made our people soft. We eliminated them centuries ago. Tejo nodded slowly. I think I understand now. You break other species because you have already broken yourselves. You destroyed the part of you that could ponder, that could find meaning in suffering. Molten's dark eyes flashed with something like anger. Take him back to his cell. Tomorrow we begin the next phase. As Tejo was led away, he looked back at Molten. I am sorry for your loss, he said. A species without philosophers is a species that has forgotten how to wonder. That is the greatest poverty of all. Molten watched him go. That night, Yeltris worked late on her report. She had begun researching human history through their intercepted transmissions. What she found disturbed her deeply. Humans had an entire tradition called philosophy. Thousands of years of thinking about suffering, about meaning, about how to face darkness and find light. They had teachers who were imprisoned and kept teaching, leaders who were tortured and kept hoping, ordinary people who faced terrible hardships and somehow kept going. This was not a normal species. This was something the Vrakor had never encountered before. She did not include these thoughts in her official report, but she saved them in a private file. Something told her she would need them later. Physical pain had failed. Isolation had failed. The human remained whole. This had never happened before in all his centuries of work. He reviewed everything they knew about humans. They were social creatures who formed strong bonds with others. They cared deeply about their families, their communities, their entire species. Perhaps that was the key. If he could not break Tejo through his body or his mind, perhaps he could break him through his heart. The next day, Tejo was brought to a new room. This one was comfortable, with soft chairs and pleasant lighting. A large screen covered one wall. Molten gestured for Tejo to sit. Today we try something different. No pain machines. No dark chambers. Just images. Just truth. The screen came alive. Tejo saw Earth. His breath caught in his chest. There was his home planet, blue and green and white, turning slowly in the blackness of space. He saw the coastline of Korea, the mountains where his father used to take him hiking, the city where he had lived and worked. Then the images changed. He saw people, children playing in parks, families eating dinner together, old people laughing with friends, the simple, beautiful moments of human life. Your species is young, Molten said quietly. You have existed for only a short time. You have built so much, cities, cultures, art, science. You love each other deeply. This is clear from everything we have observed. Tejo watched the images. He saw a mother holding a newborn baby, a father teaching his son to ride a bicycle, a group of students celebrating their graduation. His eyes grew wet. Now watch what we could do, Molten said. The images changed again. Tejo saw fire. He saw cities burning. He saw the beautiful blue planet covered in smoke and ash. He saw bodies in the streets. He saw children crying for parents who would never come. This is not real, Molten said. Not yet. This is a simulation, a possibility. A future that we could create if we wanted to. Tejo could not look away. Tears rolled down his face. He saw his university in flames. He saw the apartment building where his grandmother had lived, reduced to rubble. He saw everything he had ever loved destroyed. "We have done this to other worlds," Molten continued. "When their leaders break, they surrender peacefully. Their people are spared. But when a species resists, when they fight back, we destroy them completely. Nothing remains, not even memories." The screen went dark. Tejo sat in silence. His heart was heavy with grief. The images had been so real, so terrible. He could still see them when he closed his eyes. "Tell us about humanity," Molten said softly. "Tell us your weaknesses, your fears, your secrets. Help us conquer your species peacefully. If you cooperate, the destruction you just saw will never happen. Your people will live. They will be subjects of the Vrakor, but they will survive." Tejo wiped his eyes. His hands were shaking. "Is this real?" he asked. "Has any of this actually happened?" Molten tilted his head. "No. As I said, it is a simulation, a demonstration of what could be." Tejo took a deep breath, then another. "Then right now, at this moment, they are safe." Molten frowned. "Yes, but my tears were for a future that does not exist." Tejo's voice grew steadier as he spoke. "I grieve for something that has not happened. Why should I suffer endlessly for a possibility? Because it could become real. Because their lives depend on you." Tejo shook his head slowly. "You want me to feel the weight of billions of lives. You want that weight to crush me. But I have thought about this before. We all have. Every human who has ever loved someone has thought about losing them. We carry the possibility of loss with us always." He looked at the blank screen where the terrible images had played. "My mother died when I was 12 years old. She had been sick for a long time. I knew she was going to die. For months before it happened, I suffered terribly. I cried every night. I could not eat. I could not sleep. The future loss was destroying me even before it arrived." Molten listened without speaking. "When she finally died, something changed in me. I was very sad, yes, but I was also somehow free. The thing I had feared for so long had finally happened, and I had survived. My grandmother helped me understand." Tejo closed his eyes, remembering. "She told me that grief is love with nowhere to go. When we love someone and they are taken from us, all that love is still there, but it has no place to land. That is why grief hurts so much. It is not the absence of love. It is the presence of love with no home." He opened his eyes and looked at Molten. "But she also taught me that we can give grief a home. We can carry our loved ones inside us. We can honor them by living well. We can let the love land on others, on the living, on ourselves. Grief does not have to destroy us. It can transform us." Molten's expression was hard to read. "You speak of individuals, one mother, one grandmother. I am talking about your entire species, billions of lives." "It is the same," Tejo said. "Whether one person or 1 billion, the math of suffering does not change. We cannot feel all the pain at once anyway. We can only feel our own pain, one moment at a time. And in each moment, we choose how to respond." He leaned forward. "Here is what I have learned about humans. We are very good at holding two things at once. We can feel deep sadness and still hope. We can grieve what is lost and still love what remains. We can face terrible possibilities and still choose to live fully today. This is impossible," Molten said. "No species can hold contradictions like this. We can because we must. Our history is full of suffering, war, disease, disaster, death. If we let every possible future destroy our present, we would have gone mad long ago. Instead, we learn to live with uncertainty, to hope even when hope seems foolish, to love even when love brings pain. Molten stood up abruptly. He walked to the screen and stared at it for a long moment. You saw your world burning, your people dying, and you are telling me this does not break your heart? It breaks my heart, Tae-ho said quietly. But a broken heart is not the same as a destroyed one. Humans know this better than anyone. Our hearts break again and again throughout our lives. And we keep going. We keep loving. We keep living. Molten turned around. There was something in his dark eyes that Tae-ho had not seen before. It might have been confusion. It might have been something else. How? The question was almost a whisper. Tae-ho thought carefully before answering. Because the alternative is worse. If we stop loving because love brings pain, we become empty. If we stop hoping because hope can be disappointed, we become dead inside. We choose to feel everything, the good and the bad, because that is what it means to be alive. He stood up slowly. You showed me the worst possible future, but right now, in this moment, my people are living their lives. Children are playing. Families are together. Somewhere on Earth, someone is falling in love for the first time. Somewhere, a grandmother is teaching her grandchild the old songs. His voice grew stronger. You want me to sacrifice this moment for fear of the future. But I will not. This moment is all any of us ever have. And in this moment, the people I love are safe. I will hold on to that truth. Molten said nothing. He simply stared at the human as if seeing him for the first time. Finally, he walked to the door. Return him to his cell, he told the guards waiting outside. Tomorrow, we proceed to the final phase. As Tae-ho was led away, Yeltris approached Molten. High Inquisitor, I have never seen you hesitate before. Molten did not look at her. His eyes were fixed on something far away. I have been doing this for 400 years, he said. I have broken more species than I can count. But this human... He paused. This human is asking questions I have not thought about since I was very young. What questions? Molten finally looked at her. In his ancient eyes there was something that might have been fear. Questions about what we lost when we stopped pondering. Questions about what we became when we chose to break others instead of understanding ourselves. He walked away into the shadows of the ship. Yeltris watched him go. Then she returned to her private research. She had more to learn about these humans. Much more. The final phase was something the Vrakor rarely needed to use. Most species broke long before this point. But Kang Tae-ho had survived everything they had thrown at him, and now Molten had no choice but to use their most powerful weapon. Direct neural manipulation. The machine could reach into the mind itself. It could find memories, pull them out, and force the subject to relive them. Not as distant recollections, but as if they were happening again, right now, in full detail. The Vrakor used this machine to find the worst moments of a being's life, the failures, the regrets, the shame, the guilt. All the things a person tried to forget, dragged into the light and played on repeat until the mind simply gave up. Tae-ho was strapped into a chair unlike any he had seen before. Wires connected to his temples. Screens surrounded him, though he could not see what they displayed. Molten stood at the control panel. His face was expressionless, but his movements were slower than usual. This is our final method, he explained. We will enter your memories. We will find your deepest pain. And we will make you live it again and again until nothing remains of who you were. Tae-ho said nothing. He had no words left. He simply closed his eyes and waited. The machine activated. The first memory hit him like a wave. He was 23 years old again, standing in a classroom. A student sat before him, a young woman named Yuna, who had struggled all semester. She had come to him for extra help, and he had promised to give it. But he had been busy, so busy with his research, his papers, his career. He had canceled their meetings again and again. He had told her to figure it out on her own. He had not had time for her. Yuna failed the class. She dropped out of school. Taeho learned later that she had gone through a very dark time. She survived, but barely, and it was his fault. In the memory, he saw her face as he told her he was too busy. The disappointment, the hurt, the slow understanding that he did not care enough to help her. "I am sorry," Taeho whispered in the present. But the memory kept playing. He relived his own indifference, his own failure to see a person in pain right in front of him. The memory shifted. He was 30 years old now. His wife stood in their kitchen crying. They had been married for 3 years, and something had broken between them. He could not remember exactly when or how, but now she was leaving. "You are never really here," she said. "Even when you are standing in front of me, your mind is somewhere else. I cannot live with a ghost." Taeho watched himself say nothing. In the memory, he had been too proud to apologize, too stubborn to admit she was right. He let her walk out the door without a fight. He let his marriage die without even trying to save it. "I should have tried," he said in the present. His voice was breaking. "I should have fought for us." The memory shifted again. His father was in a hospital bed. The old man was weak, barely able to speak. Taeho had come to say goodbye, but he was angry. Angry at his father for being sick. Angry at the universe for taking him. Angry at himself for not being ready. Instead of words of love, harsh words came out. Old resentments, complaints about a childhood that was too hard, about expectations that were too high. Taeho watched himself speak cruel things to a dying man. His father's eyes had filled with hurt. He had tried to reach out, but Taeho had pulled away. 2 days later, his father was gone. Those cruel words were the last things Taeho ever said to him. "I am sorry," Taeho sobbed. "Father, I am sorry. I did not mean it. I was scared and I said terrible things and I am so sorry." The memories came faster now. Every failure, every unkind word, every time he had let someone down, every moment of weakness and selfishness and cowardice. The machine pulled them all out and made him live them again. Taeho broke. He wept like a child. He curled into himself as much as the straps would allow. He begged for it to stop. He begged for forgiveness from people who were not there. He begged to die. Molten watched the screens. The human's psychological defenses were finally collapsing. His vital signs were chaotic. His brain activity showed the patterns of complete breakdown. "At last," Molten murmured. "Even this one breaks in the end." But then something happened. Hours into the session, when Taeho should have been completely destroyed, the patterns began to change. Taeho was still crying, still in pain, but something was different. He was no longer trying to escape the memories. He was facing them directly. In his mind, he stopped running. "Yuna," he said, speaking to the memory of his failed student. "I failed you. I was selfish and blind. I cannot change what I did. But I promise you, I learned from it. After you, I never turned away another student who needed help. Your pain taught me something important. I am sorry it cost you so much." The memory did not disappear. The pain did not go away. But something in Taeho shifted. He turned to the memory of his ex-wife. "You were right," he said. "I was not really there. I was so focused on my own thoughts that I forgot to be present with you. I cannot fix our marriage now, but I understand what I did wrong. I hope you found someone who could give you what I could not." He turned to his father. "I loved you," he said through his tears. "I was so scared of losing you that I pushed you away. I said terrible things because I could not say the true thing. The true thing was that I needed you, and I was not ready to let you go." He paused, gathering himself. "But Father, I know you love me too. You showed it every day, in 1,000 small ways. You did not need my cruel words to know that I loved you. You knew. I know you knew. And I know you forgave me before you even took your last breath. The memories kept coming. But Tae-ho faced each one. He apologized where apologies were needed. He forgave others where forgiveness was needed. He forgave himself where self-forgiveness was needed. He processed years of buried pain in hours. He did not push it away. He walked through it. When the machine finally stopped, Tae-ho was exhausted. His face was wet with tears. His body was drained, but his eyes were clear. Malthan entered the chamber. He expected to find an empty shell. Instead, he found a man who looked somehow lighter than before. "What happened?" Malthan demanded. "The readings show complete psychological collapse. You should be destroyed." Tae-ho took several slow breaths before answering. "You forced me to face things I have been running from for years. My failures, my regrets, my shame." He looked at Malthan. "I have been carrying those memories like stones in my pockets. Every day they weighed me down. I was so afraid to look at them that I never dealt with them. But the pain was real. But you know what I discovered? The memories themselves were not as terrible as my fear of them. I had built them up in my mind into monsters. When I finally faced them, they were just moments. Painful moments, yes, but just moments." Tae-ho managed a weak smile. "You wanted to destroy me with my past. Instead, you gave me a chance to finally process it, to apologize to people I hurt, even if only in my own mind, to forgive myself for being imperfect, to let go of weight I have been carrying for years." Malthan stared at him. "I feel lighter," Tae-ho continued. "Emptier, but in a good way, like a room that has been cleaned out after years of clutter." He laughed softly. "You tried to break me with my own memories, and instead, you helped me heal." For the first time in 400 years, Malthan did not know what to say. He turned and walked out of the chamber without a word. Yeltris was waiting outside. "High Inquisitor, the human—" "I know." Malthan's voice was strange, empty. "I know what just happened. What do we do now? We have used every method we have." Malthan was silent for a long time. "I need to think," he finally said. "Leave me alone." He walked away, and for the first time Yeltris thought the High Inquisitor looked old. Not powerful, not fearsome, just old and tired and confused. In his cell, Tae-ho lay on the floor and stared at the ceiling. His body was exhausted. His emotions were raw. But deep inside, in a place he had not visited in years, something felt peaceful. He thought about all the people he had hurt. All the mistakes he had made, they were still part of him. But they were no longer chains. They were lessons, and he was finally ready to learn from them. He did not eat. He did not sleep. He simply sat and thought. For the first time in centuries, his mind was full of questions instead of answers. He had devoted his entire life to understanding suffering. He knew exactly how much pain each species could take. He knew the precise moment when hope died in a prisoner's eyes. He had turned breaking minds into a science, and then one human had walked into his ship and turned everything upside down. On the 4th day, Yeltris came to his door. She carried a data tablet in her hands. "High Inquisitor, may I speak with you?" Malthan waved her in. He looked different somehow. The cold confidence was gone. He looked like someone who had lost something important. "I have been researching," Yeltris said, "about humans, about their history." "Tell me." Yeltris activated the tablet. Images appeared, floating in the air between them. "Humans have existed for only a small time compared to other species, but in that time, they have suffered more than most. Wars that killed millions, diseases that wiped out huge portions of their population, natural disasters, famines, cruelties that they inflicted on each other." She swiped through the images. Malthan saw battlefields, ruined cities, faces twisted with grief. Any of these events should have destroyed them, but it did not. After every disaster they rebuilt. After every war they made peace. After every tragedy, they found ways to continue. How? Molten asked. The question came out like a plea. They have something called philosophy. Yeltris pulled up more images, old books, teachers surrounded by students, people sitting in quiet thought. For thousands of years they have studied suffering. They ask what it means. They ask how to endure it. They ask how to find purpose in it. She showed him text from human philosophers. One of their thinkers said that suffering is like a fire. It can destroy or it can transform. The difference is in how you face it. Another said that humans can survive almost any suffering if they believe it has meaning. The worst prison is meaningless pain. Another said that the goal is not to avoid suffering, but to learn from it, to let it make you wiser and kinder instead of harder and crueler. Molten absorbed all of this in silence. They have a concept, Yeltris continued. They call it post-traumatic growth. It means that sometimes after terrible experiences, people do not just survive. They become stronger, wiser, more compassionate. The suffering changes them, but it changes them for the better. That is impossible, Molten said, but his voice had no conviction. I thought so too, but their history proves it. People who survived terrible prisons wrote about forgiveness. People who lost everything created art that moved millions. They take their pain and transform it into something else. Yeltris turned off the tablet and looked directly at Molten. High Inquisitor, I believe we made a fundamental error. We assumed that all beings experience suffering the same way, but humans are different. They have spent so long thinking about pain that they have learned to use it. Our methods do not break them. Our methods give them raw material for growth. Molten stood up slowly. His joints ached. He felt every one of his many years. I need to speak with him, he said. The human. Bring him to me. An hour later, Tai-Ho sat across from Molten in the High Inquisitor's private quarters. It was the first time a prisoner had ever been brought here. There were no guards, no machines, just two beings sitting in comfortable chairs, looking at each other. I have been doing this for 400 years, Molten began. I have broken minds that were supposed to be unbreakable. I have turned heroes into cowards and saints into sinners. I thought I understood suffering better than anyone in the galaxy. He paused. But I do not understand you. I do not understand your species. You should be empty by now. A shell, a nothing. Instead, you seem more whole than when we started. Tai-Ho nodded. I feel more whole. You showed me parts of myself I had been hiding from. That was a gift, even if you did not mean it that way. How do you do this? Molten leaned forward. How does your kind take pain and turn it into strength? Tai-Ho thought carefully before answering. We suffer. Truly and fully we suffer. We do not pretend pain is not painful. We cry. We scream. We break down. But then, he searched for the right words. Then we put ourselves back together, and sometimes the places where we were broken become the strongest parts. But why? Why not just stay broken? Because we have learned that broken things can still be beautiful, can still be useful, can still have meaning. Tai-Ho smiled gently. In my country, there is an old art. When a bowl breaks, we do not throw it away. We repair it with gold. The cracks become part of its beauty. The breaking becomes part of its story. Molten was silent for a long moment. We Vrakor used to be different, he finally said. His voice was quiet, almost ashamed. Long ago, we had thinkers, philosophers, poets. We pondered existence just as your species does. What happened? Our leaders decided that contemplation was weakness, questions were dangerous, doubt was disease. They eliminated everyone who thought too deeply. They bred pondering out of our species. Molten's dark eyes were distant, seeing into a past he had tried to forget. We became what we are now, breakers. We cause suffering because we cannot process our own. We destroy others because we have already destroyed ourselves. Tejo felt something unexpected. Pity. "That is very sad," he said. Molten looked at him sharply. "You pity us? We have tortured you for weeks. We have tried to destroy your mind." "Yes, and I hated it. But now I understand something. You did not do this because you are evil. You did this because you are empty. You break others because you cannot build yourselves." Tejo leaned forward. "The suffering you caused me was real. I will carry those experiences forever. But I also understand now that you are suffering too. Every time you break someone, you prove that you cannot be whole. Your cruelty is just another form of pain." Molten's eyes grew wet. It was the first time he had felt tears in centuries. "I have forgotten how to ponder," he whispered. "I have forgotten how to ask why. I just do what I do because I have always done it." "Then start asking again," Tejo said. "Start wondering. Start questioning. It is never too late to learn how to think." "Can a species heal? After so long?" Tejo reached out and very gently touched Molten's arm. It was a simple human gesture of comfort. "I do not know, but I believe anything that can suffer can also heal. That is what suffering teaches us. Pain is not the end of the story. It is only the middle." They sat together in silence for a long time. Finally, Molten spoke. "I am going to release you. Return you to your people." Tejo blinked in surprise. "Why?" "Because I need to tell my council something important. We have finally found a species we cannot break." Molten's voice grew stronger. "But more than that. We have found a species that might be able to teach us something we forgot long ago." "What is that?" Molten stood up. In the dim light of his quarters, he no longer looked like a monster. He looked like what he had always been beneath the cruelty, a being who had lost his way. "How to heal," he said. "How to take our pain and make it mean something. How to ponder again." Tejo stood as well. "If you want to learn," he said, "I will teach you. We will teach you. Humans have been thinking about these questions for a very long time. We do not have all the answers, but we know how to ask the questions, and sometimes asking is enough." Molten looked at this small, fragile human who had survived everything the Vrakor could do to him. "Why would you help us? After everything we have done to you?" Tejo smiled. "Because that is what healing looks like. We do not heal by holding on to hate. We heal by letting go, by choosing to build instead of break. By finding the strength to forgive, even when forgiveness seems impossible." He held out his hand in the human gesture of peace. "Let me show you." After a long moment, Molten took his hand. It was the beginning of something neither of them could have imagined. The Vrakor High Council sat in their ancient chamber, a vast hall of black stone and cold light. 12 elders, the oldest and most powerful of their kind, looked down from their elevated seats at Molten and the human standing beside him. The chamber had not seen an outsider in 10,000 years. "You bring a prisoner to our sacred hall," the eldest counselor said. His voice echoed off the dark walls. "Explain yourself, High Inquisitor." Molten stepped forward. He had served the council for 4 centuries. He had never questioned their commands. He had never failed to break a subject. Until now. "I bring you a report on the human species," he said. His voice was steady, but his hearts were beating fast. "I have used all of our methods on this specimen: physical pain, isolation, emotional manipulation, neural extraction. None of them worked." Murmurs ran through the council. "You have failed?" The eldest counselor's voice was sharp with disbelief. "You? who have broken over 400 species? I have not failed. I have learned. Molten took a deep breath. The human did not break, because humans have something we do not understand. They have spent thousands of years studying suffering. They know how to transform pain into strength. Our methods do not destroy them. Our methods make them stronger. The council was silent. They call it philosophy, Molten continued. The practice of pondering existence, asking questions about meaning and purpose. They face their suffering instead of running from it. They find lessons in their pain instead of just enduring it. He gestured to Teho. This human survived everything we did to him, and at the end, he was more whole than at the beginning. He forgave us. He offered to teach us. Teach us? An elderly counselor laughed coldly. What could a primitive species teach the Vrakor? Teho stepped forward. He was calm, though he knew these beings could order his death with a single word. You could learn to ponder again, he said. His voice was quiet, but clear. Your inquisitor told me that the Vrakor once had philosophers, thinkers who asked deep questions, but you eliminated them. You decided that contemplation was weakness. The council members shifted uncomfortably. I understand why you did it, Teho continued. Questions are dangerous. They make you doubt. They make you uncomfortable. It is easier to stop asking and just act. But when you stopped pondering, you stopped growing. You became stuck. The eldest counselor's eyes narrowed. You know nothing about us, human. I know that you break other species because you cannot build yourselves. I know that you cause suffering because you cannot process your own. I know that behind all your power and all your conquests, there is emptiness. Teho paused. I know this because I saw it in your inquisitor's eyes when he finally stopped torturing and started asking questions. He looked around at the 12 ancient beings. When did you stop wondering? When did you stop asking why you exist and what it all means? When did suffering stop being something to learn from and become something to inflict on others? The silence was complete. Then the eldest counselor spoke. His voice was like ice. Enough. This human speaks nonsense. He has clearly corrupted our inquisitor with his strange philosophy. He turned to the guards at the door. Execute the human. Then we will discuss what to do with Molten. Wait. A younger counselor stood up. Her name was Vaeth, and she had been silent until now. I want to hear more. There is nothing more to hear, the eldest said. There is. Vaeth stepped down from her seat and approached Teho. I have read Yeltris's research. Humans have survived things that should have destroyed them, wars that killed hundreds of millions, diseases that wiped out entire regions, and yet they keep building, keep creating, keep hoping. How? Teho looked at her. In her eyes, he saw something different from the other counselors. Curiosity, hunger for something more. We survive because we believe that suffering has meaning, he said. Even when it seems meaningless. We create meaning. We tell stories about our pain. We write songs about our grief. We make art from our sorrow. We refuse to let suffering be the end of our story. Vaeth nodded slowly. And this pondering, this philosophy, can it be learned? Yes. Anyone who can suffer can learn to ponder suffering. Anyone who feels pain can learn to ask what pain means. It takes practice. It takes courage. But it can be learned. Other counselors began to whisper among themselves. Some looked angry. But others looked curious, interested, perhaps even hopeful. The eldest counselor slammed his staff against the stone floor. This discussion is over. The human dies. The matter is closed. No, Molten's voice was quiet but firm. I will not allow it. Every eye turned to him. For 400 years, I have served this council. I have done terrible things in your name. I have broken countless beings because you told me to. I never questioned. I never pondered. I was the perfect instrument of your will." He stood taller. "But this human has shown me something I had forgotten. That questions have value. That suffering can teach. That even the most broken things can be repaired." He looked at the eldest counselor directly. "I am done breaking others. If you want to kill him, you will have to kill me first." The chamber erupted. Counselors shouted. Guards moved forward. Chaos filled the ancient hall. Then Yeltris stepped into the chamber. She was not alone. Behind her stood dozens of young Vrakor, scientists, scholars, workers who had secretly been reading her research. They filled the doorway and spilled into the hall. "We stand with the Inquisitor," Yeltris announced. "We are tired of emptiness. We want to learn how to ponder again." The eldest counselor looked at the crowd. His ancient face showed something he had not felt in millennia: fear. "You would tear apart our civilization for one human's words?" Teho stepped forward one last time. "I am not asking you to tear anything apart. I am asking you to build something. For 10,000 years, the Vrakor have been known as soul breakers. You have spread fear and suffering across the galaxy. But you do not have to be defined by your past." He looked at each counselor in turn. "Humans have done terrible things too. We have caused suffering to each other and to our world. But we have also learned and grown and changed. We are not perfect, but we are still trying to be better." He held out his hands, open and empty. "Let us help you. Not as conquered subjects, not as broken prisoners, as teachers. We will share our philosophy, our questions, our ways of pondering. In return, you can share your knowledge, your history, your experience. Together, we might build something new." The chamber was silent. The eldest counselor looked at the young Vrakor filling his hall. He looked at Molthen, his most trusted inquisitor, standing beside a human. He looked at the cracks appearing in a system that had lasted 10,000 years. Finally, he sat back in his seat. "I am old," he said. "Too old to change. Too old to ponder." He closed his eyes. "But perhaps I am not too old to step aside." Vaeth moved to the center of the chamber. "I call for a new path," she announced. "We will not attack humanity. We will not break their leaders. Instead, we will request something unprecedented in Vrakor history." She turned to Teho. "We will request teachers." 1 year later, Teho stood in a classroom unlike any he had ever imagined. The walls were made of that same dark Vrakor stone, but the room was warm and bright. Screens showed images of Earth and Vrakor homeworlds side by side. Before him sat 50 students. Half were human, half were Vrakor. They sat together, young beings of two species who should have been enemies. Yeltris sat in the front row. She had become his teaching assistant, helping to translate concepts between cultures. "Today," Teho said, "we will discuss a human philosopher named Marcus Aurelius. He lived almost 2,000 years ago. He was an emperor, a very powerful man, but he spent his life pondering the same questions we all face. He walked among the students, human and Vrakor alike. He wrote that the obstacle in the path becomes the path, that the things that block us are also the things that teach us, that suffering faced with wisdom becomes growth." A young Vrakor raised his hand. "How can suffering teach us? Suffering is only pain." Teho smiled. It was the same question Molthen had asked so long ago. "That is what we are here to explore," he said. "Not to answer, but to ponder. The asking itself is valuable. The wondering itself makes us wiser." He returned to the front of the room and looked at his students. "At the beginning of something new. Let us begin," he said, "by pondering a question. What is suffering, and what does it teach us?" The students leaned forward, human and Vrakor, learners together, and far across the galaxy, civilizations that had lived in fear of the soul breakers began to hear strange stories. The Vrakor were changing. They were no longer capturing and breaking other species. They were building schools, asking questions, pondering existence. The galaxy watched in wonder as the most feared species in known space became students of philosophy, and it had all started with one human who, when faced with suffering, had simply chosen to think. In his quarters on the Vrakor homeworld, Molten sat by a window and watched the stars. He was learning to ponder again. It was difficult. His mind kept wanting to return to old patterns, old certainties. But every day it got a little easier. He thought about all the beings he had broken over the centuries. He could not undo that damage. But he could help build something new. A message arrived. It was from Teho. Today, a Vrakor student asked the same question you asked me a year ago. How do humans transform suffering? I told him what I told you. We break, and we heal, and we keep going. It is not easy. It is not painless. But it is possible. Molten read the message 3 times. Then he picked up a book of human philosophy and began to read. Outside his window, the stars burned on. And for the first time in 10,000 years, the Vrakor were learning to wonder at them.